I've realized that auto manufacturers do not actually build a car that I want to buy. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and this is inspired by a video I did relatively recently where the question was, what would I buy if I had to go out right now and pick something? A theoretical situation, my car is totaled and I have to have one tomorrow and I had to drive somewhere and buy something. What would I choose? Now, I invite you to check out that video, but the answer was the Chevy Trax. I think it looks good. I think the price is good. I think the interior is so good it actually looks better than almost anything Toyota is putting out. It's a really solid value and a really solid packaging. However, I, needless to say, got a lot of criticism for this, of people saying the last thing they would ever buy would be a GM South Korea car. And as I thought about it, yes, I don't really want a short wheelbase SUV with a high-strung turbocharged 3-cylinder engine. So I started to think about, well, what would I buy? And I slowly came around to the realization there's nothing out there that truly I want to go purchase. There may be options, I may rank them, that's how I think all the time about cars, but there's nothing out there that really makes me think, man, I want that. And so I started to really do a thought experiment, and I want you to play along with me here, because I've realized not only is there not something I want to buy, but there's a whole sector of the marketplace that's not being served, and I'm not quite sure why. Now, you might think about this a little differently than I do, so again, play along with me. But we have to set up some basic standards here for why I've found this hole that's not serving what I'm looking for. Because the first thing is I don't want a luxury car. Now, partly that is financial. I am not one of those YouTubers that sits around and thinks, man, I wish I could go buy my third Lamborghini. Yeah, I'm just not that. So I want something. Also, I'm cheap, right? I like to buy less expensive things. And so I need something that's not a luxury brand. So right off the bat, we're going to take off Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Genesis, Jaguar, and yes, Cadillac, even though they all offer cars. And that's the second requirement here is I don't want an SUV. While I have an SUV and we drive it, and I've driven multiple other SUVs, as much as I enjoy them and the packages that they have, the equipment, the luxury even, once I get out of it and get into my car, it's a sense of, this fits me. Now remember, my first vehicle was a car, my third vehicle was a car. I've had mostly cars my entire life with a few Jeeps sprinkled in, and I like my car. I don't want a low-slung one that's sporty. I don't want the seat that low. It gets a little harder to get in and out as you get older. So I don't want a luxury car, I don't want something super expensive, but I do want a car, because most of those manufacturers would offer SUVs that would meet many of my needs, but I want a car. The next is, I will say that I'm largely powertrain agnostic. I would prefer a largish V6, something like the 3800 from General Motors as a matter of fact, but I really don't care because this requirement is kind of overridden by the next one. As long as the powertrain is robust and provides adequate acceleration. That leads me to quiet, comfortable, and soft. And there's multiple things here that I'm kind of all lumping together under this one item. The first is I don't care what the engine's really doing as long as I don't have to hear it. I really don't want a high-strung 3-cylinder turbocharged engine just for the oral assault that would come from it. But if it's all nicely dampened and quiet, it wouldn't really be a big issue. So a 4-cylinder with a hybrid or a 6-cylinder would be more than fine with me. I don't care if it's front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive would be fine. I don't want something that's track-ready. So many manufacturers have chased the Germans that it's, it can be raced, it can be set up for racing, it can be set up for drifting, how fast it goes around the Nürburgring ring. None of that matters to me. My driving habits are small trips around town, driving further in town, or interstate travel. All right, now that's not a broad statement, but I'm not racing. I'm not looking for an enthusiast experience here. There's plenty of options if you want that, but all of them to a greater or lesser extent affect the ride. I don't want it to wallow like a 1971 Cadillac, right? And I don't want the steering feel of an old Cadillac. Competent is fine, but I would prioritize highway ride because that plays into quiet and comfortable. I want it to be relatively spacious inside. I don't really want a big center console. I don't really want a cockpit. I want generous space, soft seats, and a very comfortable ride tuned for the interstate. So when I look back in history, there's quite a few cars that would meet this relatively well. The Crown Victoria springs to mind, but that's a little bigger than I'm really envisioning here. I'd like something more in the midsize or slightly larger situation. The Buick Park Avenue fits well. The Buick Lucerne would fit well. The old Buick LeSabres, downsized, would fit extremely well what I'm envisioning here. The Lincoln MKZ would be an excellent option. Lincoln is not really one of those more premium manufacturers, and they put a lot of cars out there that were kind of playing in that middle range. It would be an excellent option. But when I look around the auto sphere now, the landscape, there's really nothing there. There's nothing there that lower-end Lincoln, Mercury, Oldsmobile, old Buick really used to serve. You might think Acura, but they're leaning more towards the sporty side, and their interiors are, to me, tight and kind of hideous. Again, Audi, Mercedes, BMW leaning more towards the sporty and much more expensive. Genesis is stretching that way as well. Maybe the low-end Genesis kind of meets my needs, but there's nothing really in that middle marketplace. If you want something nicer than a Ford, a Chevy, a Honda, or a Toyota, you have to stretch up to the luxury brand next. There's no middle area. Now, there's a few cars that kind of almost meet the needs, but not quite. So I finally settled on one that, yeah, I kind of think it's it, but it's really not. The first one would be the Volkswagen. It's beautiful. It looks good inside, but it is kind of pricey. And when you sit in it, to me, it feels like sitting in a bunker. I actually looked at one of these at an auto show a couple of years ago and did my thoughts on it on video, and largely got criticized of not understanding how luxurious it really is in Europe, but mostly I found it to be very uncomfortable overall with horrific visibility out. Add to that a high price, and I'm going to take it off the list. Again, next I would consider maybe some Acuras, but I think they're a little tight, a little hideous looking inside. And as I look around, there's really nothing else out there. Lincoln offers only SUVs. There is no Mercury. Buick offers only SUVs. Cadillac is more expensive, and their vehicles are largely sporty models. That's what's really succeeding for them. So what's left for me is Lexus. And unfortunately, it doesn't really meet my needs. But the ES is just about perfect. It's close to luxury. It's very, very quiet. It's extremely reliable. It is more pricey than I'm envisioning here because they took away the option that, to my utter shock, is and would be my number one choice. And that would be the Avalon. It's the same platform that the ES was based on, but big and comfortable. Now, they've replaced it with the Crown, which I didn't particularly like. I'm not sure I like the up-on-stilts hatchback interior quality and design. And it leaves me with, I guess, the ES or a used ES would probably be the closest to what I'm kind of looking for. And they have a hybrid option, which would be nice for the fuel economy. But if you're sitting here thinking, where's the old LeSabre? Where's that Park Avenue with a 3800 in it? Where is, again, the Lucerne or the LaCrosse or that MKZ? Over 30%, something like 34% of Americans are over 50 years old. And yet I believe there's not a marketplace right now of vehicles that are above the base levels, the Ford, the Chevys, the Hyundais, but below the luxury brands that offer a car. Quite honestly, Lincoln or Buick would be my number one choice, but they don't offer a car. And I have trouble believing that with over 30% of Americans being over 50, that there's not a marketplace there of people who want that slightly premium feel for much less money than the luxury manufacturers and are willing to pay for a car at the same time. So, as always, another year comes and I'm going to sit with the one I got because I'm perfectly happy with it. But it just bothers me. There's not actually a vehicle, a car out there that I truly want. Thanks for being here, guys. Let me know what you think below. And as always, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for being here.